So is everybody ready?
Oh, 1 second, I need to pull up the...
I like the critical role sticker.
Thank you. Alright.
You guys ready? Cross, you good?
Yep.
Starting now. Planetary trees. The United States federal government should substantially increase its international cooperation with the Russian Federation over active debris removal. Advantage number one is space debris. First, space debris will make low Earth orbit unusable. Space debris collisions are increasing now. We are at a tipping point of our runaway buildup debris will jeopardize all space operations in the LEO. Implementing debris removal is the only viable way to prevent this scenario. Held in 2019. The number of satellites in orbit might rise to over 15,000. New significant orbital collisions occur once every 5 years to give rise to over 2,000 new debris elements. This has led to a recommendation that there be new active space debris removal programs to remove the largest debris elements from LEO as quickly as possible, with at least 10 a year. There is a serious concern that the catch system can unfold to endanger all forms of space deployment in the future. Inactions to reduce space junk will lead to a runaway buildup of debris, lethal avalanche of space junk unless action is taken. Next, and existing guidelines for debris mitigation won't solve. All studies conclude debris removal is key to preventing cancer syndrome, Chow 2018. The United Nations Committee of the PUOS has adopted space debris mitigation guidelines. These guidelines are not sufficient to deal with the space debris problem. Space scientist Johnson concluded that in the long term, the removal of large orbital debris will be essential to the sustainability of space operations. And tracking of debris and providing SSA data will not prevent collisions. Ultra and found in 2019. LEO and GEO operators are challenged to address the 4% of tracked objects. To address the other 96%, would be conducting avoidance maneuvers at the risk of running out of fuel. Operators constrained by their orbit determination programs prevent the extraction of covariant status spacecrafts. Operators in all regimes struggle to determine which conjunctions are too close. Operators are unable to determine the metrics and data necessary or the criteria to choose them best. The algorithms sometimes contain invalid assumptions. 70% of this critical alerting maneuvering towards the object 30% of the time. Scenario 1 is agriculture. Satellite disruption undermines global food supply by crushing production. Challenge 2013. We've been able to monitor global climate patterns using satellite sensing without information from space. We would be ruining our ability to monitor global rainfall patterns. It's very difficult to conduct ground and aerial surveys to collect data on a global scale. One must use space systems. Feeding the world is only possible because of our ability to monitor food production and rapidly alter the changes. These require satellite systems. And digitalized agriculture enabled by satellites is the only solution to food insecurity. During 2018. In 2030, there'll be an extra billion people to feed. Global demand for food will increase for 50 years. But the work to produce more food efficient use of water reduction, soil erosion, degradation, minimization of energy, and maximization of output yields are the goal. Digitization has increased in importance through technology like GPS. These practices are facilitating long-term improvements to achieve environmental protection. And food shortages trigger worldwide food shocks. Multiple hotspots escalate. Castle in 2017. American food security is imperative in reducing multiple threats. History has shown us the stable food prices secure countries' food insecurity leads to instability, drive migration, destabilizing population, generating conflict. Food shocks correlate with the protests and riots in emerging markets. Purchase 20% of the protests of the U.S. Exports and expected to grow as population booms. Insecure countries deteriorate into shooting wars. America agriculture is essential for providing greater security, health care, stabilize key regions, robust food security, community growth, terrorism, and support the world security. Next, scenario number 2 is global conflict. Losing satellites will spark global conflict for 2 reasons. First, losing civilian satellites will undermine the global economy and create massive instability. Second, losing military satellites to space debris will lead to conflict. Next, spring 2018. Imagine where LEO is no longer allowed satellites to orbit safely without being hit by debris. Claiming with one another, creating even more to be making it difficult to launch satellites into higher orbit. This is because of global conflict, military lose capabilities, civilian lose basic leisure, since internet and television. In space were unusable, the world might then become unstable since we depend on data from space for any national economy to function. The loss of military satellites to space debris can incite armed conflict between space-faring nations. Next, and the lack of ability to identify whether collisions were delivered or not ensure conflict. Dr. 2016. Actions from space junk could incite warfare within nations. And taking debris as international acts of aggression. Space junk cannot easily be used for military attacks. The risks are compounded by the sheer volume of debris. Small fragments of greater risk and trackable debris as satellites can't avoid them until it's too late. Next, globally common climate caused World War III, Lou 2018. In the current landscape, economic crisis could escalate into major global military conflict. Periods of distress characterized by antipathy towards foreign countries that fuel unrest, terrorism, moral populism make matters worse. Despite interconnectedness, multilateralism is being eschewed in the next economic crisis could lead to a large-scale military confrontation. Solvency. Active debris removal is vital, and Russia will agree to cooperation until due until 2017. Students said despite difficulties on Earth, people in space work to fulfill tasks that are essential. Space collaboration has been one of the bright spots between the 2 adversarial powers. Trump can leverage space cooperation, lower geopolitical tensions while removing orbital debris. It is time to move on to the debris cleanup by active debris removal. Orbital bands with the largest number of objects posing current risk to satellites in LEO orbits around 780 kilometers are currently the most hazardous. How Russia fits in. Russia and the United States have been major producers of multi-ton orbiting objects, removing only Russian rockets from LEO, reduce future shrapnel accuracy by 62%. The U.S. could approach Russia for bilateral cooperation and for space talks. These talks will lead to a U.S. bilateral orbital debris mitigation agreement, which would deal with about 86% of the mass in LEO. There is a shared interest in ensuring space safely of the debris represents enormous potential value, and the already in place debris objects for repurposing and recycling. Cooperation with the U.S. would offer a way to lower geopolitical tensions. Next, cooperation by NASA and Roscosmos has been proven successful in poor U.S. Russian relations and not a barrier to cooperation on space. Helm 2018. What might the new international claim station look like? The main goal ought to be the removal of large space debris, which contributed most of the casual syndrome. There are viable technical solutions. We will leave up to the engineers to decide. The development should be led by the U.S. and Russia. NASA and most governments have worked together successfully in the past to do so in the future. Although relations between the U.S. and Russia are not at the best at the moment, the two nations have managed to remain peaceful and cooperative partners above the ISS. The same would be true in the development of operation of ICOS. Next, Russian cooperation is vital because it on 67% of debris in LEO present in others 2017. Active debris removal prevents casual syndrome because most space debris belongs to Russian. International agreements will require debris not in LEO owned by Russia 300%. No, the ocean owns only 13%. Next, invention number 2 is ADR arms race. Unilateral ADR arms race is happening right now. ADR development is being done unilaterally. Now the Greece dual use versus evidence capture 2018. Weaponization of space is inevitable, but there's still time to make it peaceful. ADR spacecrafts are being developed by the U.S. and Russia. ADR spacecrafts are unavoidable given the growing nature of the space debris problem. The same spacecraft could be used that can remove debris can use as a space docker. They have the capability to get close to snack satellites the U.S. military relies on. Next, unilateral ADR development makes space conflict inevitable. Hunters and Woodward 2017. ADR tech is dual use and can be used for military purposes without significant conversion. As part of the OST, an atmosphere of escalatory competition is suspicion that can arise due to lack of transparency and unilateral implementation of ADR. The process can instigate arms races with significantly augment tensions and the possibility of conflict with great detriment to international security. Next, climate relations and lack of bilateral communication makes escalation likely. Burn 2018. There's a chill in U.S.-Russian relations doubling into nuclear war. Two powers need to talk more during the Cold War. We talk about all those well today. Communication is an important part of deterrence. Adversaries know each other's capabilities and intentions are less likely to fall into conflict. It doesn't have to be a lot. Moscow said it's ready to talk. Russia remains open for interaction in the de-escalating intentions of mutual trust, bringing any misinterpretations and absence of dialogue relating to crisis management could lead to war with Russia or even nuclear leaders. Next, space conflict causes nuclear retaliation and risk nuclear preemption against Russia and China. Gallagher 2015. Aside attacks risk nuclear war. Nuclear retaliation will be irrational, but powerful countries will respond irrational when their attack. Crisis management will become more difficult, and the risk of inadvertent deterrence failure would increase if leaders become more concerned. China and Russia prepare for an anti-satellite attack. Russia could build up a preemptive attack against Chinese or Russian strategic forces. Next, insolvency. U.S. bilateral cooperation on debris creates trust, communication, prevent conflict. Road 2016. We are concerned by Russian pursuits of weapon systems that are capable of destroying satellites in orbit. Diplomacy can assist in developing guidelines for orbital debris mitigation, encouraging responsible behavior to the development of NORADs, voluntary transparency, and CDMs. Diplomatic engagement providing an opportunity to enhance a common understanding, creating support for U.S. policy. Bilateral space cooperation has including orbital debris mitigation, have opportunities to engage Russia and ensure there are no misperceptions and miscommunication in the crisis. Next, and removing Russia requires our consent cooperation. John 2017. Russian Federation has advanced the idea that space debris remains under their jurisdiction. Any interference in the debris without authorization is a provocative act and might rise to the level of use of force and armed attack, and therefore legitimize the right to self-defense by all states. Next, future U.S. Space cooperation on Venus and Moon is inevitable. World News Service 2019. Russian scientists continue cooperating with NASA and implementing missions to Venus and the Moon. Zelensky said last week he had a symposium with NASA on our plans for the mission to the Venus. We are holding discussion with NASA on the lunar program. Roscosmos and NASA started their visit to plan work on the lunar orbital platform gateway. NASA would ask the Russian Space Agency to develop a Soyuz spacecraft for the flight of the moon. Next, Putin is not seeking territorial conquest of NATO military forces and economic sanctions to deter any future aggression. O'Hanlon and Ziegler 2019. Russia advances no grandiose concept for worldwide conquest. NATO accounts for more than half of all world military spending. NATO has deployed enhanced forward presence battalions in the Baltic state of Poland. It is hard to see Putin really believing he can get away with an all invasion. He is consciously avoiding any military excursions to NATO countries. Sanctions on Russia has developed a use of punitive blow against Putin and has helped dissuade any further Russian aggression, but be it against Ukraine or Georgia or even the Baltic state. Russia continues to engage in disinformation and election meddling, but these should not be confused with the existential risk of a Cold War. And that is the end of the speech. I'll give the remainder of my time and I'm ready for prospects.
Okay. So first question, you mentioned about the agriculture stock, about a decline in food supply. So I know the importance of maintaining food supply, but why do you think the presence of Russia is necessary in terms of solving the food problem?
Of food supply or of Kessler syndrome?
Food supply.
Okay, well, the food supply is underpinned by GPS, which is using satellites. So if we don't have satellites, we're not going to be able to meet the global demand for food, and we need Russia because we need to clean up the LEO, and they own most of the debris in LEO.
Are you saying that they have the strongest technology in ADR?
No, they own 67% of the debris that's in LEO, and we can't remove it without violating their sovereignty, so we need them to agree to help remove it with us.
And you mentioned that the decline in global economy will lead to World War III, but past econ decline didn't cause global wars. So what's your example of validation of this one?
Because no time in human history have had their economy dependent on one thing as much as we are dependent on satellites now, because satellites underpin the entire international economy, and we are so interconnected that if the entire LEO would become unusable and all satellites went down, then basically the entire economy would fail.
Yes, but still my question is, I know what you're saying about the decline in
Yes, I'm saying that we have never experienced a similar symptom like this. Like, just like 2008 is not at all comparable to what we are seeing right now. Like, if every satellite, like, we've not seen every single satellite which underpin the U.S. economy, or the world economy, going down. We've only ever seen a few institutions fail, never the entire satellite system.
Okay. And it's obvious that there's political tension between US and Russia, and how are we sure that Russia at this time will say yes?
Because the United States and Russia regularly cooperate on many instances of space cooperation. We are going to Venus and the moon with them, and we still work with the International Space Station. So space has been actually the best spot of US-Russia cooperation.
Are you saying that this space cooperation already exists?
Space cooperation already exists, and it's going to exist well into the future as well.
So in the status quo, this is already happening?
In the status quo, we have ample space cooperation, yes. And that's been like the best part of cooperation between the United States and Russia.
And then we also mentioned SSA, like only tracking the debris is not enough, so we need ADR. So in terms of SSA, is there any cooperation between US and Russia right now?
That's irrelevant. Because the reason I brought up SSA is because we can't just simply track the debris and then move away, because we don't track enough debris and it takes way too much to move out of the way for each debris. The reason we need to cooperate with Russia is so we can get the debris out of the sky, so we don't need to conduct those avoidance maneuvers with SSA.
So is ADR considered SSA or STM?
STM.
Prep. Y'all need prep?
Yes, do you have
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Starting now. So first of all, about UNCAS. The AF plan has no solvency because there are numerous barriers to U.S.-Russia relations this September 19. Russia and the U.S. remain far apart in Iran election interference cause of world crisis. Lebron denounced that the state of affairs between the two nations. Election meddling would put our relations in the worst place. Trump is pressuring Iran, and Trump administration is calling into doubt and stating news story. The West blamed tensions with Russia on Moscow's attempts to establish with its rebels, and Lavrov had a simpler explanation anti-Russian sentiment, and ADR cannot resolve debris. The tech is shaky. Legal distributes deter countries from clearing its debris even if cooperation happens, and there's no stable funding stream. That's Warner. And numerous barriers to ADR. This is Toyer 19. Cleaning up space and ensuring missions stay clean is hard given technological, regulatory and financial issues. Cleaning debris or building satellites that comply with the best practices is expensive. For commercial satcoms, dealing with an onslaught of parameters is challenging. And there's no impact to space debris. The risk of collision for any given space based on resources is less than 0.001%, and that absolutely solves a minuscule risk of debris colliding, and there's no impact to acceleration. This is called B16. No one believes that a limited space attack would possibly be a prelude to a total nuclear war. Would the United States respond with a strategic strike if China struck discriminately to dethrone power projection, possibly foolish? Official statements, no indication that will respond massively. Officials telegraph U.S. not respond massively to attack against space assets. And moving on to off cases, our EU current plan is that the European Union should propose increasing removal of space debris through establishing confidence building measures between China, Russia, and the U.S., building trust between these global powers to work towards space debris removal together. Only the counterplan solves. The EU is the only way to build trust. This is the Villarino 667. The European Union as a broker of trust. The mistrust that exists among China, Russia, and the United States is a consequence in modern warfare. The inability of these participants is bringing them to develop even greater capabilities. Leadership is unlikely to be accepted by the others. EU is the only global actor that has all of the tools necessary. Confidence building measures between Russia, China, and the US is in the domain of space. Only the EU has the appropriate institutional framework tools already within its current legal and policy framework. The EU has the past recast problem with the US interprets it as solvable solely with the hammer of military intervention as problems of the diplomacy. The EU and its member states appear to be peaceful bystanders by bringing the three space powers together. The EU could achieve better security and reliability of space assets, which would benefit its population as well as the whole planet. And moving on to the DA, our first DA is Russia spending. Russia's budget is tight now. New spending creates this diversionary pressures and regional instability. This is through 19. Russia budget revenues has declined, placing a burden on state coffers, and pensions, social security have been spared from cuts. Increased pressure on the budget heightened the importance of control over remaining funds. Budgets have important political implications. In declining revenues, the regime will have a difficult time legitimizing its rule. Crimea gotten approval if legitimacy becomes an imminent threat. Russia would mobilize patriotic sentiments. Prolonged budget crisis could spread to neighborhood countries. Unsolved conflicts in the region will spin out of control. And space cooperation with the U.S. is physically impossible for Russia. Plan tips Russia over the edge. This is for 19. Russia will no longer be essential to NASA. Russia's ability to make major contributions to NATO's plans is in question. It's not something leaders are likely to accept easily. The Russian response seems to be proposing large, ambitious civil space projects as if they had the funding to carry them through. They don't. And nuclear war. This is style 15. If the Russian economy deteriorates, the center may not keep the periphery together. Problems lead to uprising. Russian influence could so discord in the EU. Uncertainty concerning the control over nuclear arsenals increase. Nationalism could deflect as a distraction. Conflicts in Moldavia risk increases for escalation. The second target is in Belarus. Russia would ban nationalism in West Balkan. Russia would break NATO through challenging Baltic states. Tension will rise drastically with risk of miscalculations. For the U.S., it has global connotations. Enemies in the Middle East and Asia form assumptions. Threat of nuclear strikes, however, deterrence will lose credibility. And moving on to our second DA, the plan reverses Russia's partnership with China. This is Corner 18. Russia's preference is to press on the U.S. If talks fail, Russia can turn to China for partnership. China is offering initiatives for cooperation, asking for help, asking to help them develop, suggesting creating a joint station. There might be two stations circling Earth led by Russian-Chinese enterprise. And Rodriguez floated the idea of break station for Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And the U.S. viewed the relationship as zero-sum. Only Russia-China relations can create official global governance. This is China Daily 18. Political trends call for closer coordination since Washington has identified both as rebels. The Cold War mindset that characterized the U.S. found expression in a confrontational and zero-sum approach to relations. By working together, Russia and China are showing relations do not have to be defined by competition. Beijing and Moscow can work together to prove the ability to counter uncertainty created by Trump, forging a community with a shared future, provide an antidote to Washington's fixation on a dangerous path. That's necessary to solve a litany of global problems, says Yame 18. Shortcomings of the existing global governance system are prominent, which can hardly ensure development. Traditional dominant forces are seriously imbalanced. Traditional mechanisms such as the World Bank and IMF fail to reflect the demand of new pattern in addition to their lack of representation. There have been risks in such key areas such as economic governance and climate change, nuclear security and terrorism, cybersecurity, polar regions and oceans. An existing international system guided by the Western centralism. The Western civilization has always had superiority. Many problems today can be directly attributed to lack of exchanges, communication, and integration among civilizations. China will evolve independent from a more inclusive civilization perspective. And the Chinese solution is more practical and intimate as well as emphasizes inclusive cooperation. China has not overthrown the existing system, but has been engaging in innovating and perfecting. China has proactively undertaken international responsibilities, but has to act according to its ability. China has proposed credit card and proposed. China relations. And then the
Okay, are you ready for cross-ex?
the Yammer card. Yes.
Sorry, where did you cut it? Cooperation or propose or something like
propose.
that? Propose. Okay.
So you didn't get to shunning DI? Is that
Okay, I got it.
So you ready?
Yes.
So So in one of your cards, you said in the Russia-China dissent, you said that the United States, or that Russia would prefer the United States if we did this.
Sorry, what card was it?
Or just in your dissent, as like your general argument that if the United States were to approach Russia, Russia would then peel away from China and then align with us.
Yes. So that's like
Okay.
a more imbalance.
Okay, I get that. But then in your solvency, you said that Russia would say no. So what are you going to argue?
Russia say no to.
In your solvency, you said that the United States and Russia are at like geopolitical odds, so they're not going to cooperate with us. So either they're not going to want to cooperate with us, or they want to cooperate with us. So which one are you going to argue?
I'm saying that Russia will not be willing to cooperate with the US.
But then why would approaching it hurt its relationship with China?
Because as I mentioned, China has a very strong power in terms of technology and space,
Okay.
technology, and then so that would be an alternative choice.
Okay, so then so is your argument then in your Russia-China relations saying that Russia and China are like the best pact to have global governance?
According to our counter plan, we're trying to bring the three powers
No, but
together.
I'm asking about your dissent. Are you saying that Russia and China form the best like pact for global governance?
Yes, currently.
Okay, so are you aware that both of these sources are Chinese sources?
Yes, we're trying to prove why the involvement of China is important.
Do you think that the best way to propose that is through sources funded by the Chinese government? Never mind. Okay. And then are you saying that there is technology is not currently ready to actually do ADR?
Right.
Okay. And then are you saying that Kessler syndrome right now is not a problem because there's only a 0.001% impact?
Right.
Are you saying that's in the status quo or in the future?
That's a scientific fact. So.
But is it in the SQO or is that always going to be the case?
It's always will always be the case.
But it's only going to be a 0.001%?
We're not sure about the future increase, but for sure as.
But you're saying this is the SQO?
Like this data is of course based on past experience.
Okay, and why do you believe the European Union is the best actor? Why can't any other body do this?
What do you mean by any other?
I'll address it in mine.
Okay, then I have two questions.
Is your counter plan conditional?
No.
No, we're gonna keep it.
Okay. Then,
Oh, right, I have one right now actually. So are you saying that Russia is going to threaten NATO when it attacks the Balkans? Because your card says that 2015 that was stipulated, but why would they attack NATO? Why would they attack NATO now if in the past 5 years they haven't? Like what would provoke them right now?
okay, we are going to the counter plan, and then back on case.
Okay, so the overviews are going to be on case?
Yep,
The top?
so just some brief on-case overviews
Okay.
to extend the arguments.
And then
And
the
then
disads and then the counter plan?
Disads and the counter plan.
And then back to case?
And then back to case.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at the cards. You guys all, did you all receive it?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Then let me try to put these in somewhat of an order. Did you put these all? Let's just count them.
Y'all need more prep?
What? No, I was just ordering my papers for this. Alright. My minute. You guys ready?
Yes.
Yes. Jojo, you ready? Yeah. Okay. And then Louie, you're good? Yep. Alright. Then I will start. Stage 3 advantage over you. Stage 3 in LEO is unsustainable right now. Cascading collisions are inevitable unless at least 10 objects are removed each year. We have two major impacts. One is agriculture. Precision agriculture depends on satellites and is key to increasing yields for around 2 billion deaths in global conflicts. Our second impact is global conflict. Loss of billion satellites will undermine the global economy, which leads to World War III. Also, loss of military satellites would bring complex in the wars. Co-op with Russia solves. They own 67% of the debris and support co-op. ADR arms race overview. Unilateral ADR is happening right now by U.S., Russia, and China. Dual-use tech creates misperceptions and mistrust, leading to space conflict. Russia co-op solves. It builds trust and communications, and we need Russia's consent for removing the debris. Now to go to the arguments. First of all, non-unique Russia space co-op is happening right now. Not unique. U.S. is buying additional seats from Russia to send astronauts to ISS. World Service Wire 11/20/19. NASA intends to purchase additional seats in the Russian Soyuz to deliver astronauts to the ISS. Negotiations between NASA and Roscosmos are ongoing. Branson said the U.S. Space Agency would most likely need 1 to 2 seats on Russian Soyuz. Not unique. Congress will extend co-op in the ISS until 2030 and wait until 11/11/19. A new proposal called the NASA Act of 2019 would mandate extending the ISS through 2030. Lawmakers in both parties hope to have legislation passed by the end of the year. Not unique. Co-op with Russia on lunar mission funding new service 10/19/19. Roscosmos and NASA agreed to join the developed lunar orbital portal. Russia could build a gateway module for this station and create life support systems. Not unique. Co-op with Russia on mission to Venus, Rayom 10/23/19. NASA mission seeks to explore Venus. Venera D is a joint program between Russia and NASA Space Agency, which involves Venus orbiter and 2 landers targeted for 2026. So, what all of these non-unique arguments mean is that every single one of their dissets has no relevance because we are already cooperating with Russia right now, and Russia is already planning to do future things. So in addressing the idea of spending, they are already spending a ton of money. They are going to continue spending a ton of money, and they have budgeted for all of these expansions. So this is not unique to our plan. Furthermore, we don't necessarily need them for their funds. We don't need their money in order to do this plan. The main reason why we have to work with them, which they did not address, is they own 67% of the debris in LEO, which means without Russian cooperation, without Russian consent, we cannot remove 2/3 of all the debris. So we need them no matter what. The Russia-Sino relations. They made the argument that if this fails, then Russia and Sino could cooperate, but they were very contradictory throughout this entire thing, and they said that U.S. views this as a zero sum. Most of their evidence for this section was all from China Daily. This is clearly an extremely biased source that is saying that Russia and China need to work together. That has nothing to do, or that is not a fair source. The U.S. and we already get red cards that Russia wants to cooperate with the U.S. They are already cooperating with the U.S. And there's no reason why they are going to fail at cooperating in this when they already have plans in the future, like all these non-unique cards said. Moving on to the counter plan. First of all, international fiat is illegitimate, promotes unrealistic view of U.S. policymaking, whose actions are limited to USFG solutions. Not reciprocal. EU fiat is over 28 nations, whereas the AFB is 1 nation. Fiat beyond 1 nation justifies utopian policies like world government. This is a voting issue. Negative should lose for advocating an illegitimate C plan. Voting on theory is vital and deter future abuse. So what this means is that they are trying to say the entire EU is just going to automatically agree to do this plan. They have not read a single card saying the EU would actually cooperate. Every single nation in the EU would have to agree to their plan, and that is just simply not the case. Furthermore, we're also going to offer a permutation on their counterplan. There's no reason why, if their counterplan were to work, then it could not also be done in tangent with our plan. Their own evidence says that they need to create, they need to start cooperating with China and Russia in their own evidence for the EU counterplan, which means these are not exclusive, so we can do both. Moving on, U.S. and Russia saying no, they want to weaken the EU on March 19. The one thing in common between U.S. and Russia is their willingness to weaken the EU. Countries like Russia, the U.S. challenge us harder than before. President of the U.S. And the President of Russia share the same view of Europe, the weaker the better. Transatlantic relationship isn't challenging. EU's relationship with Putin is yet another challenge. And here is true, countries saying no, they don't like Eurocentric process via 2017. Russia expressed a preference agreement over the code. States expressed serious concerns with the Eurocentric process. Failure to include non-EU states criticized for cast out and prospects of acceptance. Emerging powers expressed concern about signing. Saying no decks EU credibility, Doe was 19. Main troubles for Europe would arise if the tensions worsen, if initiatives are not widely approved, prestige would also be damaged. 5, German economic decline will cause the EU collapse, Bridges 925-19. What happens to organizations like the EU that promise their members prosperity in exchange for surrounding some sovereignty? Once those bodies can no longer deliver on the promise, in the previous decades of crisis racked Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Ireland, anti-EU forces gained prominence across the bloc. And one country even voted to leave it altogether. Germany, the growth engine of Europe, has been straining to outrun recession. Germany looks likely to lose, and it will inevitably drag the rest of Europe down with it. European Union is in trouble. Funding shortfalls prevent EU space tech from rapidly developing ADR 1 2019. The European space sector encounters funding hurdles at the growth of commercialism phase. In the U.S., funding rounds are larger. Scarcity, scale-up funding in Europe is critical shortfall, which leads to the flight of talent companies. The investment landscape in Europe is suboptimal and makes commercialization of space technology difficult while not capitalizing on the R&D investments made. EU soft power fails, Wunsch 19. EU operating in permanent crises. Eurozone migration, Brexit represents systematic flaws. Populist governments challenging core institutions. External challenges range from a strained transatlantic relationship to rise of China. The EU's ability to bring positive change challenged by the instability in countries of the Eastern Partnership. Arab Spring crisis challenge soft power fostering Euroscepticism. Next, the response to ADR is not feasible and it's not going to be it's not going to work. ADR will be operational within a year. Leone 18, this evidence postdates theirs. Industry and academia are working on several innovative and effective solutions. Several ADR solutions have been presented. Steps are approaching technological maturity and are expected to be flight ready before the end of the decade. So it is completely unfeasible. It is going to happen. It is already happening. That point is moot. Moved on to the idea that Kessler won't happen soon. Kessler syndrome happened within a few decades. Action soon is vital. O'Donnell 925-19. Kessler syndrome could occur within a few decades. Debris fragments collected on LEO. Self-sustained debris creation process poses a huge risk to ongoing space opportunity unless something is done soon. Where the tipping point now, collision rates are escalating and debris is growing rapidly. Bushel and Moses 2019. We launched signaling satellites. Many of the non-released satellites are still in space. There have been 240 explosions and many collisions. This contributed to the current space debris. The amount is daunting. Estimates about 6,000 tons. NASA also includes the current orbital debris environment has already reached a tipping point in mass, meaning the amount of debris has reached a threshold where it continues to climb with itself. Increase in population debris. The increase in debris will lead to increase in spacecraft failures, resulting in more debris. The increase has been most rapid in the LEO. Cascading of collisions producing debris until space is unused is termed the Kessler effect. We are near the tipping point of the Kessler syndrome, making all space assets in LEO vulnerable to destruction. LR in 2018. The accumulation of space debris could lead to a Kessler syndrome. We may be near the tipping point. Crossing the tipping point will leave the majority of space assets in LEO vulnerable to destruction from space debris, potentially crippling industries and applications that rely on them. Adding large constellations will lead to more collisions. Baker 4219. NASA called India's destruction of satellite in March a terrible, terrible thing. India intentionally destroyed one of its satellites with a missile on March 27th. Bryson was critical of the India for he said that his threat would last some time, potentially inspiring other countries to take similar action. The risk of ISS colliding with debris has increased by 44%. So what all of these Kessler cards mean is that it is happening right now. We are at a tipping point. The longer we wait to do this, the worse it's going to get. Every single time a satellite is launched in space, every single time a collision happens, it gets worse and worse and worse. All of our evidence postdates theirs by at least 2 years each. Their evidence is so completely out of date, it is irrelevant in this debate. They cannot speak on the fact that Kessler will not happen when they cannot account for the last 3 years of what has been going on. They cannot account for the last almost 4 years of what has been going on. And this last card talks about how India recently, earlier this year, did an ASAT attack, launched one satellite, and increased the risk of collision by 44%. That's massive for one satellite. And this is just one. There are going to be several more launches, and it is only going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's what all of these cards are saying. And the only way to stop that is to work with Russia, because Russia owns 2/3 of all debris in space, and it is in their jurisdiction. We need them to remove it. We need their consent. We cannot do this alone. We cannot do this with just the EU. We need Russia. We need to start acting on this, or we are going to get all the impacts that we talked about. The Kessler syndrome is going to happen. It is happening now, and because of that, it is going to cause all of these satellites to start failing. We are not going to be able to use the LEO, which links back to the impacts from the first page, that we're going to lose complete access to the economy. We're going to lose complete access to the internet. We're going to use all of our military satellites. The impact is huge. We need to act now. And agriculture is another major impact. If we don't act now, we are going to lose all our satellites for agriculture, which means the entire world is going to starve. Give me a sec. Let me take a sip of water, and then I'll be ready for cross. I did not stop. Ooh. All right, ready for cross.
So basically you're saying, we're agreeing right now, this basically is an issue because this is when it's happening.
So you are saying Kessler is going to happen? Okay.
Okay, cool. And then,
Awesome.
sorry, can you explain a little bit more why our EU counterplan does not stop?
The EU counterplan can only account for a very small minority of the debris in space. Russia owns 67% of the debris, which means in order to remove that, we need to cooperate with Russia, because it's in their jurisdiction, so they have to say, yes, you're allowed to remove this. And we can't do that if we just work with the EU, which means that we could only remove roughly 20% max, and actually be closer to 9%, because China owns 11 and we own 13, and Russia owns 67, which means there's a very small amount of debris in space that is actually owned by the nations in the EU, and they would only be able to remove that amount.
You're saying that US and Russia are going against EU, right? Like you said,
Yes.
they have an agreement that they want to weaken the EU.
No, we're saying that the United States doesn't want to weaken the EU, but Russia does.
No, the argument is that they both,
Yeah, I
something
believe
in common is that they both are willing, they are willing to weaken the EU.
What's the reason for that?
In the card it says that, sorry, give me a second. Basically, it's Trump's America First policy. He believes that America should come first above all else, and that means that weakening the EU will cause America to come first. He is in full support of that, because we should be in support of our nation over other nations.
Okay, so US wants to weaken the EU, but why does Russia want to do that?
It's not that they want to weaken the EU, it is that they are willing to weaken the EU if they have to, in order to further their own country. So if something were to go either you help the EU or you help America, the US will choose America every single time.
As to Russia, Russia just a natural.
And Russia is the same for them. They would choose Russia every single
Okay,
time.
so
How would collaboration work between the two if
they're going
in-
for self-interest, right?
No, we're saying we can basically permutate the plans, because we can cooperate with the EU.
So we could
as
work
well as
with the
cooperate
EU as well as Russia in order to remove all of the debris. This way it'd be in everyone's benefit, so it's not like US saying, oh, screw you EU, we're only going to remove ours. It is everyone working together so we can remove all of it so that it can benefit all of us. That is putting America first along with the other nations, so it is benefiting everyone, and that's why we would be willing to work with the EU.
Where our plain text is distinct is that we work directly with Russia rather than just relying on trust confidence building measures put forth by the EU.
Okay, so you said you want cooperation with Russia, but you also said US want itself to be the first power. So are you saying Russia, US and Russia have equal status, or US is always the leading point?
Can you explain what you mean by that?
You said you want US.
If you'd like to use prep, you could finish the question.
We don't understand the
What's
question,
that?
but I would like to use some prep.
Next block, right?
Are you gonna do the one that you dropped it? Or not drop it, didn't get to?
No.
Okay.
No? Okay.
We're
So
done.
it's just the spending, relations, and counterplan.
Yeah.
Yep, cool. What order?
Oh.
You know, or not?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
the
we're
doc
doing-
shows spending relations. Is it going in that order? Spending and then relations? Like you have a
Yes,
bunch of
it's
spending cards and a bunch of
spending,
relations
Oh,
cards.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we good?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to start off with the cross-sites clarification. We didn't say that Russia would say no. We just said there's current tensions between the two countries, us and the U.S. and U.S. and Russia, which is in Kramer and Pinna 19. Okay, on the off-case positions. Space debris. Only the counterplan can solve space debris. Villarno 6-7. ESA estimates that there's more than 170 million pieces of space debris. A need exists for a collective approach to execute a massive cleanup. An EU-funded project within a medium-term time frame, 47 years. This kind of cooperation between Russia, the United States, and perhaps China would only be possible if a third party such as the EU catalyzes and funds the initial steps. So once again, the time frame for this is 47 years. Well, they've been mentioning their time frame is around decades, and their impact is decades. So like, if our time frame is shorter, wouldn't it be more efficient to go with our counterplan? And then you can build trust and cooperation. Verse 13. The space debris problem illustrates the need for collective security in space. For the EU, space debris is an opportunity to take lead. First, the EU can press on with diplomatic initiatives to build trust, encourage cooperation, dialogue, and transparency. The goal to reach agreements concerning space debris. The EU can spearhead development and deployment of ADR technologies. The EU can aim to keep it transparent and use confident building measures to minimize distrust. Moving on to our Russia spending DA. Russia is cutting Roscosmos to compensate for low oil prices. James Clay Moltz 19. Russia's oil dependency budget has another problem. Long-term Russia's space budget has now been reduced drastically to 20 billion. Roscosmos has led to a resort to selling property and buildings to recoup costs. Marketable products for the commercial product. We're moving on. And Russia's space spending is declining out due to budget cuts. That's consistent with the broader economic strategy. Meister 18. Roscosmos will be asked to make do with far fewer rubles to Russian space program might face cuts. Space funding shortage is around to 150 billion rubles. The space budget experienced deep cuts due to a deteriorating economy and Western sanctions. Uniqueness, political stability high to Putin doesn't need growth to maintain political stability. He uses another means to maintain power. Possum 19. Putin's look to discontent in Moscow and poor domestic growth as a trouble for Kremlin, but the regime does not view it as an immediate crisis. Putin cares about macroeconomic stability. He wants to control the population by other means. He doesn't care about growth rates. Link, space. Russia can't afford the high cost of space cooperation. Budget means that they're failing to meet current agreements with NASA. Adding large and ambitious civil space projects like the plan break Russia's budgetary room. That's Berger. The threshold for a link is low. Budgetary surplus is key to protect against inevitable economic shocks. The plan removes that flexibility. Daria Concern 18. Russia strives to fill state coffers to give itself a buffer against new U.S. sanctions is prudent. The saving strategy is fiscally ultra cautious and prudent. There's no leniency here. Officials' desire to hoard cash in the economy is buffeted by an external shock like Russian sanctions or a new global financial crisis. Budget surplus will allow Russia to be put aside money to protect our economy from oil markets or any fallout sanctions. In the macroeconomic stability, the key priority for Kremlin is Russia's credit savings may benefit as Moscow keeps tight fiscal control. Russia's space spending is extraordinarily expensive, ruins their
She's like, use mine.
Oh my gosh, why did I just
You don't use one of
the pressure hundreds. Link tech development to NC. They can't afford tech modernization. Burger 18. Due to budgetary reasons, Roscosmos reduced the number of cost launches, and because technology problems and cost pressure, commercial launch is fading. Conditions may worsen. There is no place for modernization. Link exploration. Exploration cooperation requires high cost, which Russia can't afford. I'll mark card there. Skipping the next two cards to Russia and China relations disruption. DA. And space debris. They're specifically cooperating over space debris, the planned trade-off. Sharma 18. Russia has signed a memorandum with China to cooperate with latter deep space exploration, and Rajin struck the cooperation deal with CNSA. The agencies agreed on a bilateral cooperation focusing on space debris monitoring. Russia and space cooperation have mostly been with the U.S. The Russian agency started working on a contingency plan that could only see the country shifting its cooperation from the U.S. to China. This move came in the wake of a worsening relations. Effective global governance outweighs China's integration strategies, the only way to create international buy-in to solve nuclear security, terrorism, cyber attacks, narrow weapons, and disease. These cause extinction outweigh in magnitude the plan's cooperation efforts fail because the other countries don't want to work with the U.S. because their zero-sum approach to IR, so only Chinese-Russian leadership can solve the app. They said it's key to solve AI and that outweighs. Searching in Dinkenberger 18. The probability and seriousness of AI failures will increase over time. AI is an extremely powerful and completely unpredictable, millions of times more powerful than nuclear weapons. Its existence could create multiple individual global risks, most of all which we cannot currently imagine. The sheer number of possible failure modes suggests that there is more to come. Greatest existential risk, talks 16. The biggest event in human history, unfortunately, might be also the last. Our greatest existential threat is AI. I agree that and don't understand why some people are not concerned. Stephen Hawking's more than 1,000 AI and robotics researchers signed a warning of rampant destruction at the hands of autonomous weapon systems which can engage targets without human intervention. AI technology and deployment is feasible within years. Uniqueness. Russia and U.S. space cooperation is low now. Political leaders are clashing. Core 19 Congress joined the chorus of opposition to issues. Rodson is an outspoken nationalist deputy to Putin, sanctioned by the U.S. Another sanctioned official has come to Washington for a secretive meeting with Pompeo. Lawmakers protested. Space exploration is not immune. Even the focus of space policy has shifted. World events and political changes have often derailed the United States and Russia's best intentions. And launched sanctions chill cooperation. Walmart and Stewart 19. Russia accused the U.S. of trying to unfairly grab market share in the space industry after the U.S. military imposed restrictions on cooperation with Moscow. These restrictions apply to launches and cover services with satellite and launch vehicles. The DoD would avoid contracting Russian satellite providers. Moscow criticized the U.S. move. The U.S. has long conducted a policy of trying to squeeze Russia out of the market. Roscosmos condemned the U.S. move, calling it the latest case of unfair competition by Washington on the international market for space services. Russia hates China. Russia will only partner with China if they can't rely on the U.S. The plan changes that perception. Dobbins 19. The U.S. continues to lump China and Russia together in hostility and might as well encourage them to work well together more assiduously and concertedly, nor is it likely driving a wedge between them. Beijing has little incentive to counterbalance Moscow, nor does Russia pose a clear challenge to Russia, has reasons to be apprehensive. Unless Russia concludes that its path reinstatement is more likely to lie in rejoining the West than in China, and maybe accept the indignity of ever greater supplication. Link talk. The planned trade-off with Russia and China relations. Russia is shifting towards China bound, but only because they view the U.S. as an unreliable partner. The plan changes that perception, causes Russia to back down agreements with China. Roscosmos leaders explicitly stated that they would shift to China in response to declining cooperation with the U.S. Zach 18. Russia's space agency might break up with the U.S. to go with China. Roscosmos State began to work on a contingency plan that would shape its future in space cooperation from the U.S. to China. Russian experts put forward ideas for contributions to Chinese space station and adopted would mark historical moment for Russian program, which has cooperated with the U.S. for nearly decades. While the lunar station remains on the drawing board, Roscosmos decided to look at the alternatives. Cooperation instructed strategists to develop a cooperation with China by supplying Russian hardware. Chinese officials have been inviting other space powers for a number of years, but the response was lukewarm. Now there are signs that the situation might be slowly turning to China's favor. Russia and China could see their goals in space converge if the U.S. fails to fully draw in one of these two countries to its own orbit. And that's fine. I'm ready for Cossack.
Okay. Alright, ready?
Yeah.
On your Russia and China relations, wouldn't it? So what's the argument? Like that Russia is going to work with China?
No, the argument is that if we decide to, well, like Russia and China are already currently working on a bunch of like space debris removal
Okay.
currently in the status quo, and they're already like working towards these great things like together in space. But like if we were to collaborate with Russia, they might seem like driving a wedge between the two countries, and that creates greater instability in the political world.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's actually something I want to address. One of your cards, so your tag reads that Russia and China cooperating on like debris removal. Your card only reads that they're cooperating on debris tracking, which is SSA, which is not ADR. So there's nothing in the card that says that they're removing the debris. So like, is there
Which
a card?
card is it?
It was the card that addressed Russia and China, the one that you just referenced. Russia and China are cooperating on debris removal. I just want to know if there's a part in the card that says that they're cooperating on debris removal. So like, where is it in there that it says it?
I think they're focusing on space debris monitoring right now, and yes, it doesn't say explicitly that they're focusing on space debris removal.
Why, if you say that Russia hates China on your Davos 19 card and Zach 18 Russia wants to work with the US, why would they not want to do our plan? Like, why wouldn't they want to start working with us?
Right. So basically, what that card is saying that it's like there's starting to be this weakness link between Russia and China, and they are, for us, like our stance is that they're a really great governance for the world right now.
The US stance is that Russia and China are
like
better
our
leaders?
stance, like
Okay,
yeah,
got it.
is that like the Russia and China should stay together, and we should keep their good relations because they're gonna help keep global peace essentially.
Okay, so your argument is that if the United States were to partner with Russia, China would be more, they wouldn't be happy about that. They would want to peel away a little bit. Yes?
Yeah.
But so then, my issue is that how can we believe that if your evidence stating that Russia and China are like the best global pact comes from Chinese sources funded by the Chinese government? Because wouldn't they be incentivized to want to say that to keep Russia on their side? Like, how can we believe that that evidence is credible if it comes from the China Post and the Beijing Institute of International Studies?
That's like from a different perspective, right? So like, if
But I mean, I'm asking, like, is this source credible?
yes.
Why, if it's coming from a Chinese source?
Well, why is all your U.S. sources that like come from U.S. sources
Because
that say like
United
U.S.
States-
and Russia want to cooperate
Because
from U.S. sources?
Because the United States government doesn't have very stringent press laws and doesn't fund each of the universities so that they promote their own perspective.
Okay.
So-
Your FOSSA 19 card was about how Russia doesn't need space for political power. What was the point of this card?
Russia doesn't. Which
Yeah,
one?
FOSSA 19, like Russia doesn't need space for political power or something along those lines.
Russia doesn't.
Or political stability. You need.
Doesn't need space.
Yeah. Never mind. Okay. Are you guys gonna take prep?
How much time do you have left?
I can't remember. I don't remember how much you just used. I accidentally left my timer running during your speech.
Because I think we used like around like 1:30 for the last prep. So like adding that to 2 minutes and 27 seconds.
That's not 3 minutes? 3 minutes? Is that enough?
We have 10 minutes.
about our counter plan.
Okay.
Can we have this?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. You might want to like pull it close to yourself because the one leg is like.
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
uneven.
thank you. Ready?
Good to go.
Okay, first of all, on case responses. So our opponent mentioned that Russia has 67% of the degree in Leo, and so U.S. need Russia. Yes, we need U.S. need Russia, but also EU includes Russia. So I don't see any conflict with that by using the our counter plan. And also our opponent mentioned that both U.S. and Russia are going against EU. They want to weaken EU, and when during the process they answered that the reason behind this is that U.S. and Russia are individually going against EU due to their self-interest because they want their self to be strong. So in this case, cooperation will fail because states are all self-interested and they want to maintain their own dominance. So I don't see a important or any valid effect that will be resulted from this cooperation between U.S. and Russia, since they're going for their self-interest anyways. And still about the fact that U.S. and Russia are going against EU, so we believe that our opponent assumes that the U.S. is a hegemony, and then they want their self to be the leading power of the world. So our opponent mentioned that the EU has no soft power, but if the U.S. is going for hedge, then where's the soft power of the U.S.? Because if the EU multilateral cooperation has no soft power, then how does U.S. have soft power in terms of instead of forcing cooperation? And then so moving on to off case, we're gonna address again our counter plan because we think there's a slight misunderstanding of our EU counter plan. We're saying that the counter plan will pull the three space powers, which are China, Russia, and U.S. together, and this counter plan solves EU cohesion over space leadership. But as our opponent said, they're gonna do PERM. So in this case, the PERM doesn't solve this cohesion, and this is Kolsinski 18. An active role is vital for European states from perspective of their international position. Space powers have a greater impact on the development of space law and subsequent establishment of corresponding domestic space law. They shape their regulations around their space policies. It is key to take a clear and unified position in this matter in order to regulate the issue to assure adequate protection of space and on-ground environment.